Welcome back to the YouTube channel. I'm Joanna Kleinman, psychotherapist and CEO of the Dethroning Your Inner Critic coaching and consulting company. So let's dive into today's topic, which is this one powerful shift that is going to change the course of your life. So let's dive in, okay? You have a mind that has been part of your identity for your whole life. In fact, you have a lifetime of an analytical mind that's trained in a lifetime of overthinking and maybe skepticism, maybe, inner logic. And that mind tries to find control, tries to find solutions to what it perceives as problems that you need to fix and solve and prevent. So, what does that do to us when we're caught in that old automatic mind? Well, it creates a vicious cycle of hope followed by disillusionment, right? It feeds this dependency on external circumstances, maybe external validation from other people, external things that need to match your idea of what your life is supposed to be. And ironically, that keeps you trapped in an energy of uncertainty and waiting. So you're either waiting for life to bring you what you feel you need in order to feel okay, or you're waiting for the shoe to drop. So your rational mind is this powerful survival tool. And that survival tool has one job only, and that is to keep you protected and safe and find the dangers out there that you need to prevent, which is why your automatic mind will continually whisper doubts and feed you with a logical sequence of what you need to do and who you need to be in order to make sure that life goes the way that you want it to. Now, that is the voice of your inner critic. That's the voice of that logic and that fear. Now, the truth is that your authentic self is underneath all of that inner critic noise. And when you spend a lifetime listening to that inner critic noise, you can feel really exhausted. You can feel really overwhelmed. And even though you're doing all of the things, right? Maybe you're trying to create your life with visualizations. Maybe you're doing the meditations. Maybe you're practicing gratitude. Maybe you're doing all of your journaling. But behind all of these rituals, there might be an underlying tension and an effort to control the outcome. That's your inner critic. So, when you are living a life where you are trying to force reality to conform to what we can call your inner critic's needs, okay, this constant struggle drains our life force, okay, because it operates from the promise that you're separate from the power that you're actually seeking, and therefore you need to prove your worth to receive that power. And that's when you might search for signs out there to show you that you're on the right path, right? The shift comes when you are able to play in the lightness of the unknown, because the unknown is where so much possibility lives for you and for your life. This is where your true power resides. So, your inner critic swings you from excitement to fear back to excitement. There is power in staying neutral. Neutrality is the only place where you can truly access your authentic self. Your inner critic has a lifelong addiction to needing certainty, control, proof out there. So when you can step back and stop fighting the storm that your inner critic creates And you can anchor yourself into a stillness, a trust, a certainty. That's where all the possibilities in your life will start to emerge. External reality will actually reorganize itself to mirror your inner neutrality, your inner stillness. It's a subtle calm. It's more powerful than what any external circumstance can provide, but the transformation that's available to you is not something that's going to come from the outside. It's something that you've got to create and shift from within. See, your peaceful reality exists right here, right now. I want you to imagine that peaceful future self, that calm, centered, grounded future self. Imagine that that future self is here right now. And that future self is saying to you, listen, the path is clear. There's nothing for you to do to force your life. All there is for you to do is stay grounded in that neutrality and just keep following what feels like the very next right step from that place of neutrality. That's your new internal compass. Stop being a seeker and a chaser of external signs because your certainty can only come from within yourself right now. That is the clarity that frees us from our inner critic's anxiety of doubt and the exhaustion of the search. So, can you relax into the flow of what you're creating? Can you trade your inner critic's need to see, to believe, and trade that for the wisdom to just feel and to know that you are on the right path? Can you give yourself permission to trust yourself? Can you anchor into that internal reference point that keeps you steady amidst all the challenge and the uncertainty and the unknown? Can you relax into that clarity and certainty? So, what I'm inviting you to do is to start to unhook yourself from the weight of doubt that you've been carrying for so long and allow yourself, maybe just for this instant while you're hearing me, to not need any of the answers, to not need any of the signs, to not need any of the external proof to validate your worth and power, to just be in this sacred space because you are co creating your life with the universe. So there's a space between those fearful thoughts. There's a subtle silence that exists underneath all of that noise that your inner critic creates. Now just try and access that stillness. Don't try and force it. It's always been there. It's been patiently waiting for you to see it. That's the space of neutrality. That's the space that's filled with pure potential. This is the space where you get to create your own inner stillness and serenity and keep expanding into the version of you and the version of your life that lives from that stillness. That's the starting point of the deepest transformation that you will ever have for you and for your life's path moving forward. Now, what you want to understand is that there's no destination with this journey. This is the start of the journey into where your true authentic self officially begins. Your old identity has been shaped for so long by your inner critic self, which is filled with resistance, filled with what your inner critic perceives it needs. So your inner critic has this soundtrack that it's been listening to for your whole life. That soundtrack is to the theme of proving your worthiness, fighting for your enoughness. And you've grown so accustomed to listening to this incessant noise that maybe even the peace of that neutrality, of that stillness, of that centeredness might feel a little strange, almost suspicious. See, your inner critic interprets this stillness as a problem because her job is to find the answers and the solutions to that noise. But your true freedom, your peace, your joy doesn't live in trying to find those solutions. You have to understand how to tune into a completely new space where that noise just doesn't exist, right? Now, you're not getting rid of your inner critic. So there, imagine your mind like a radio station, okay? So your inner critic is tuned into those oldies but goodies, right? That's where your anxiety is, that's where your overthinking is, that's where the repetition of the old fears and the old stories and the old doubts and the old hurts from your past. And you've been so used to living with this oldies soundtrack that it's just become the backdrop of your life. You've learned to sleep with it, you've learned to work with it, you've learned to relate it to other people, you've learned to use it as the lens through which you see the world. The space in between that noise, that's where your power lives, but it feels unsettling. Because without that familiar drama and the problems that your inner critic creates, what are you going to find solutions to? What are you going to find answers to? If you're not out there finding solutions and answers, then who are you? That's a good question. Because your inner critic identity has been built on struggle, on overcoming, on pushing through. And all of a sudden, when you find that stillness, now that old identity is finding itself losing its primary function in your life to keep scanning for those potential dangers, right? So, this is the critical point in rewiring your brain. Your brain is addicted to those old neural pathways of stress and fixing and pushing and figuring out and overthinking. In fact, here's the crazy part, that's where you felt the safest, inside the chaos, because your inner critic self believes that peace and stillness means you're not steering the ship. You're not trying to figure out the danger. And if you don't figure out the danger, the shoe's going to drop. Something's going to come and catch you off guard. So your inner critic believes that overthinking and overmanaging and overfunctioning and proving yourself is what leads to the peace and joy and freedom. Doesn't that sound crazy? Your inner critic is energetically addicted to the drama of its own creation. So every emotional reaction to a trigger, every wave of worry about the future, that releases a very familiar biochemical cocktail in your body. It releases adrenaline, it releases cortisol. And by the way, your inner critic gets this biochemical cocktail also when she feels like she's won. The high of the accomplishment then feeds the low of the fear and doubt, right? It leaves you continuing to chase for the accomplishment to feel that you're okay, right? Flip side of the same coin, that constant reactivity that keeps you anchored in the energy of the problem. And so life mirrors the problem back to you. Your nervous system has been programmed to find safety in what it can predict, even if the predictable is chaos and drama. So breaking your inner critic's addiction to the drama requires a shift in your attention. In other words, moving your focus from that noise of your inner critic trying to find the solutions to the noise to finding the space behind the noise. That's where your authentic self resides. And you've believed that you need to change your inner critic's noise to understand its origin and all of its distortions in order to then be able to no longer get caught and wrapped up in that noise. That's not the answer. The answer is not to go back and analyze your past, to dissect your mistakes and your failures and all of the places where your past self has created the chaos. No, because that's the trap of your old inner critic identity. That identity convinces you that the solution lies within the problem itself. So the true paradigm shift occurs when you realize you don't have to do anything with your inner critic. You don't have to do anything with that noise. You don't need to fix it. You don't need to understand it. You don't need to forgive it. You just need to withdraw your attention and focus from your inner critic's noise. Now, remember, where your attention goes, your energy flows. In other words, when you tune your attention towards your inner critic noise, that's all you're going to hear. So, your only task, which is the most liberating task of all, is to shift the focus to the space underneath your inner critic's noise. You don't need to create that space, it's already there. You need to allow yourself to see the space beneath the inner critic's noise. The peace, the wholeness, the well being of your authentic self already exists. It's just that noise of your old identity, your old reality that's so loud that it's drowned out the peace. So the key is to stop fighting, to stop trying to fix the noise, to let go of control. That's how your attention detaches from your inner critic's noise, even if it's just for an instant. When you surrender, you can feel maybe for the first time clear music, a different channel, not the oldies station, but you can hear the clear music of your new self and your new life that you are ushering in. Now, it's not maybe that the things you used to see as problems, it's not that they've disappeared, but it is that when you're seeing those things through the lens of your authentic self, the problem has lost its power and grip on you. That problem no longer has the ability to rob you of your vitality and energy. And when you feel that spaciousness, even if it's temporarily, you feel lightness in your entire body. And you can even tune into where your inner critic's noise has been stored in your body. That physical sensation, the tension in your shoulders, the pit in your stomach, the lump in your throat, that's your inner critic's somatic signature. That's the survival mechanism that's been etched into your nervous system. That's that familiar discomfort that your mind interprets as normal because your inner critic self has dominated your mind and your body and your spirit for so long. So when you're able to unhook from that old identity, again, even for a moment, you can feel that spaciousness inside your body, that expansion in your chest. Maybe your shoulders just relax a little bit, right? Again, that can feel a little abnormal because your inner critic might want to jump in and search for the new problem to create that familiar tension. That's the gravitational pull of that old inner critic identity. So recognizing the physical sensation, that's the indication sign. That's the blinking red light that your inner critic has taken over. And when you're no longer willing to engage in this old inner critic identity, when you're no longer feeding it with your precious attention, your precious life force, this is how you allow your body to acclimate to a new state of being. So I want you to just do a little exercise with me right now. Think about your biggest problem from this past week. Now, instead of trying to solve it, I want you to just step back and observe it. I want you to even remember the emotional weight, the urgency, the cycle of the thoughts that it generated. And remember how this problem colored your perception of the world, right? How it seemed to be the center of your universe that was defined by your experience of that problem. Okay. Now actually let yourself feel your inner critic's energy of fear and doubt and worry in your body. But this time, bring it to the surface without merging with it. Just watch it. Kind of like you're watching a scene from an old movie that you starred in, right? You're the star of that old movie. So just observe the energy of that version of you that was so immersed in the energy of the challenge and the struggle. Don't judge it. Don't try and change it. Just observe it. Okay, now, with the memory of that in your awareness, but here you are in the observer stance, ask yourself, does the emotional charge of this situation still carry the same weight? Does it still feel the exact same in your body when you're just observing it? Or do you notice a subtle difference being the observer and having created a space between you and the energy of the problem? Now, really feel into this. Like it's like you're observing a situation through thick, soundproof glass. You can still see what's happening on the other side of the glass, but the deafening sound of your inner critic's drama has been muffled and muted. Now, maybe the problem still exists as a circumstance, but you can feel yourself beginning to unhook your nervous system from the reactive circuits of the past. Right? Maybe you can even feel like you've withdrawn some of that old energy because you didn't solve the problem at the level of the problem. You've risen above. You're observing it. You've risen above the old self that created the problem, right? You're watching that old self. And that's how you change the direction of your internal compass. Even if your inner critic is using old habits of thought, old habits of worry, new anxieties. See, your new identity now is no longer the person who reacts to the world. When you find that space, you're anchored into a new self. The old triggers might still come, but they no longer have the power to anchor into your soul. See, that space that was once occupied by your automatic inner critic self, which has to analyze and defend and control and explain and prove, now you have the space to anchor into a calm presence. You have actually become the observer on the mountaintop. You're able to see the storm that's forming in the valleys below, but you're not getting wet in the storm, right? You're not being swept away by it. Your peace doesn't depend on the absence of the storm. Your peace is anchored in an unshakable connection to your own inner center of power and serenity. See, your old inner critic mind has been programmed to seek out those problems as a way to ensure its survival. Now, let's be clear. Your inner critic is still going to try to create new noise. It's going to create a new worry. It's going to interpret your new piece as dangerous because the absence of drama can seem kind of like this frightening vacuum to your inner critic, right? So your inner critic has to fill that vacuum because it defines itself by struggle. So when you get sucked back in, don't see this as a setback. It's just echoes of the old paradigm, of the old inner critic self that's losing its strength. In other words, every time you're sucked back in, it gives you a new opportunity to practice unhooking yourself from the noise. So your job now is to no longer reside in the energy of need and lack and desperate searching. Your job now is to already embody the energy of wholeness and stillness. That's when life starts to mirror that energy back to you. And how does it do that? Well, you will start to see new opportunities showing up. new circumstances that perfectly match this new internal energy, new doors that open, because you're living from the embodiment of the energy that aligns with your new self and your new life. So, which old inner critic noise are you choosing to no longer energetically align with? Think about it. Is it the noise of self criticism, the worry about the future, the hurt from the past, the analyzing of the mistakes you've made, the need for external validation? Just name it. Name it as your inner critic's addiction and unhook from it whenever that addiction grabs you. Name it, write it down with its exact thoughts, with its exact body sensation, with its old patterns of behavior. And as soon as you write it as an old inner critic identity pattern, unhook it, release it, feel it dissolving in the moment. That's the thing that awakens you to your innate power. Because that inner calm and peace is exactly what reorganizes the world around you. Your attention shapes your reality, not the other way around. This is how you become the creator of your destiny. The real work isn't finding peace out there. The real work is living from the peace in here. So each day, each moment becomes an opportunity for you to choose your authentic self over your inner critic self, to use the noise of your inner critic to remind you that you hold the key, you hold the power to shape your reality instead of being at the mercy of your circumstances. Your life is not something to force into existence. Your life is something to allow to unfold from the power and stillness that lives in your authentic self beneath the conditioned noise. So thanks for tuning in today. If you found this video useful, please subscribe to the channel. Please share it with somebody that needs to see it. And thanks for tuning in today.